Let's examine the crack in this base bridge here, which is not at all uncommon. This is a solid piece of maple. You can see the grain is cracked along the grain direction, which is this way, which I'm not quite sure about that. Usually I've seen base bridges with the grain going this way, but the reason this is interesting, sometimes when you see a crack like this, you see a simple solution of just squeezing this back together. Put some glue in there, squeezing this back together. So in this case, that's not going to work for a couple reasons, some of which are interesting to think about why it broke in the first place. A simple explanation is these pins they're called bridge pins or stagger pins. They used to be called stagger pins. They're staggering these big heavy bass strings, and there's a lot of pressure on them. So if there's any issues with the wood or just with old age, that's going to stress out the wood. Now, is that why this opened up? Usually you'll just see some small little cracks along here. Why this split all the way across is kind of interesting to think about, and also the fact that it's so big, such a large area. And what makes me interested in that is because I fashioned this clamp just for the fun of it. This clamp is based off old-timey clamps that had handles on them that you could do this. You would wind these handles, threaded handles, and it would clamp it. They probably wouldn't fit in here, and I don't have one of those anyway. But I made this thing, and just by taking this wrench, you can put a lot of pressure on there. And without showing it, it doesn't budge that at all. So that's one thing that makes us curious, why this is so far apart, and why it won't go back together. There's another reason to not simply just clamp this back together. It's hard to tell how long this has been cracked, but when air and dust and dirt get into these things, it makes for less of a good glue solution. Just simply putting glue in there and squeezing this as hard as it takes to get it back together, it's likely to fail again anyway. As hard as you have to squeeze this to get it together, it's going to try to come apart. With a dirty glue surface, that's also working against you. So how do we reintegrate these pieces of wood? Because this is clearly disintegrated. And another reason to work on this is because you see this an awful lot on the top of base bridges between the bridge, and this is called an apron. You see that a lot in here, and I think a lot of times it's caused by the two pieces of wood change with humidity. There may be some stresses in there internally to begin with. There may be something that these two pieces really want to be open like this. So let's not try to force these things back together. Let's not try to take a chance with this. So what do? We get a piece of maple like this, thin it down, get it to fit in there perfectly, and then clamp that in, trim it down, and there, you've reintegrated both of those. Now it's worth spending a little time talking about how to get to that spot. And here's every saw that I own almost. There's a couple more laying around. And one thing I've done is make this little block that just has a list of the saws I have, and then the slots that they cut. And then, I have all kinds of veneer of different sizes, and also you can make wood different sizes by taking something like this and clamping it something like that, and then with a plane something like this, going something like that, and create a piece of wood of the right size. So, like I said, this is something that's it's a good idea to work on this stuff because you see these kind of splits all the time in wood that just don't want to come back together perfectly. So anyway, between all the saws and stuff, I've decided that this broken piece of saw, which I fashioned like this, is a good idea to get in here and open this up a little bit more, clean the dirt out, whatever dirt is in there. You want to expose some fresh wood. Take this fresh wood, glue it in there, take the clamp it back together, and then trim it down. And then I'm going to have to re-drill this hole carefully, save the pin, put the pin back in the way it came so the top is nice and shiny with that. And that'll be that. I probably forgot a lot of things, but when I think of it, I'll make another video.